All right. Hi. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art of the Feminine podcast. This is Shannon Port, and we are, um, oh, whoops, sorry. We're going to be talking today about the solar eclipse in Capricorn, and we're also going to be discussing just the archetypal energy for this month of January. So, Happy New Year. It's good to see you. I'm just going to do a sound check really quick. I'm sorry. You can hear me. Thank you, Azra. Thank you. Okay, great. I had my cursor went out on my computer and I wasn't able to get it open. So, it took me an extra minute, but thank you for being here. It's nice to see some of you, and happy New Year. 2019 has arrived and we are in a new archetype. I'm planning to do a video specifically for the archetypes of 2019, either within the next two videos. But we will be incorporating some of that wisdom into the topic that we're going to talk about today. And so yes, I'm going to be talking about the month of January, and really, the eclipse is taking place this weekend, and so I'm getting the eclipse video up a little bit close to the eclipse, but the energy that we're speaking of is the entire year. So if you're catching the video after the eclipse energy anyway is very potent for 6 months to a year. And so, but because it's this specific eclipse in Capricorn, right between Saturn and Pluto, and it's very much the beginning of some alignments that are going to be really big in the collective psyche over the next year and a half. And so, all right. It's so good to see you. It's nice to be in this new year. So this eclipse is the Aleph, the Hebrew letter Aleph. It's the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet, which corresponds to some of the wisdom that we work with. And it's the breath. It means it's the first breath of this year. And so it's the way that we're starting off 2019. And I put that it's karmic. It's a karmic initiation. And I'll tell you exactly why I chose those words. I just need to have a sip of this really quick. All right, I was running to get here. So, the reason that we are calling it a karmic eclipse is for several reasons. One, that it is conjunct Saturn. It's happening at 15 degrees of Capricorn, and Saturn will be at, I believe it's 11 degrees Capricorn. So Saturn is in its own sign in Capricorn. Saturn's going to be there all year. It's been there for most of the past year. And Saturn rules initiation. It also rules karma. And the sign Capricorn itself is ruled by Saturn. It's ruled by the archetype, the devil. And it's one of my favorite archetypes. And we're going to really dive into that archetype today. And we're going to be incorporating this wisdom in many videos to come. And so I just want to say, sometimes we start conversations and we're just getting the conversation going. This in and of itself isn't a complete download of everything that we could possibly say. And that's why I really always encourage you to bring something, whatever you want, to the table, and to make comments in the chat as we're working. Come back and make comments afterwards, and keep the conversation going, so that we're kind of pulling together as we're working in unity consciousness, and we're using our creative imagination, which is very, very, very connected to this eclipse, to bring it all in, and to inspire, and to just work with our hearts and work with our wisdom. It's so funny. The last video that we did, I had asked somebody to tell me what movie it was that I was trying to think of, with the where the person would go to sleep and wake up the next day and she could not remember who the person was that she was with. She had to keep renewing her memory. We were talking about the power of memory, and somebody kept writing it in the chat, and I didn't catch on to that. It was the name of the movie that I was referring to was 50 First Dates, and there's a couple others similar. But anyway, so I apologize that you kept putting that in the chat. I think it was Susan, and I didn't see that until afterwards. I realized that that's what that was. So let's let's go right into the planets. I have a couple announcements I'm going to make, but I'll wait until the end of this podcast to talk about. I'm getting ready to start 3-month mentoring in January, all through January, but I have left details for that in the description box, and I'll say a word or two about it at the end of the video. And so let's talk about what's happening. Let's talk about where we're at. I also have some previous questions from other chats that I haven't touched on, and a lot of comments that came in about family, about sexuality, about practice, personal practices. And I'm going to incorporate some of the ideas into this video, but then Anna, I'll make a specific space to talk about those and address those questions. They were really, really, really beautiful. And so I'm just going to take a peek in the chat really quick. I feel I was running to get here a little bit today, so I'm just kind of unity. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Oh, I can't wait to talk about the archetypes for this year. So this year has a completely different, it's a different archetype. It's a different trajectory, and a different element of our psyche is highlighted. So that's why I would really love to hear from you how you're feeling it so far, what those numbers mean to you, what the archetypes mean to you, and talk about the signature energy of this year, because it's really big. I mentioned last video that this is the 7th year cycle. In the we go in 7-year cycles. This is the 7th year since 2012. We crossed over solstice at 2012. That was the big the Mayan prophecy year, where we actually have entered into a new age, a new epoch. And so we're in the 7th year in that age, and that's also one of the reasons this is called karmic initiation. And so I will slow down just a little bit and tune in a little deeper. We are in the 7th year since 2012. That means we're going to get the first taste of the fruit of how we've used our energy on planet Earth and individually for the past 7 years since we passed through that portal. That portal opened up a whole new reality. I mean, it really, with technology, with social media, which is hugely what we're going to talk about today, but we are in a different vibration signature since that portal has come in. And I would love to hear how you are experiencing that, because I have some ideas, but I'd like to hear how you guys individually are feeling that in your own lives, in your own creativity, and in your own relationship. So let's look at Capricorn. Capricorn is the sign right now. When you look at the wheel, when you look at the zodiac, when you look at the planets, they're all stacked up in Capricorn right now. The emphasis has been building to Capricorn. We had the Pluto-Uranus square that was going on for years, really emphasizing Capricorn in the cardinal signs. Right now we have the North Node in Cancer. The South Node is in Capricorn right now. I believe it's 26 degrees. The North Node is in Cancer. And so that is also bringing Capricorn really, really into the picture right now. So the South Node is our karma, and it's what we're releasing and what we're transmuting and clearing with Saturn and Pluto sandwiching in this eclipse with the sun and the moon, this partial solar eclipse. We have the planets of Pluto, the most transformational, which brings about regeneration, death, and rebirth, and Saturn, the planet of contraction, initiation, self-mastery, and the great teacher, who's also very connected with the Holy Spirit and the Divine Mother in its positive aspects. And so Capricorn, it's on right now. Capricorn represents our patriarchy, and the reason being so is because Capricorn represents the father energy. Many of us will be coming into a greater understanding of that masculine principle and the father principle as it exists within us. The high wisdom of Capricorn is spirit, is how it connects to the spirit, the father, which is in spirit, and brings it into matter, because Capricorn is really about manifesting. It rules our physical form, our bodies. It rules architecture. It rules our it's the 10th house. It rules our status in the world. It rules our fame and our fortune, how we interact. Even though Capricorns tend to be low key, they're very almost hyper aware of status and where they sit in the world. They're aware of designer labels. They're aware of quality. They're aware of what's important and what gains recognition. So that's very Capricorn. So this energy is really highlighted right now. Let's look at some of the other planets that are there. So we have Mercury. Mercury is at 1 degree, right at the beginning of Capricorn. It's just crossed in. And Mercury is at 1 degree squaring Mars, and I believe still squaring Chiron, the wounded healer. But Mars is now at 3 degrees of Aries. And so these cardinal signs are firing things up. But Mars and Mercury will be in a pretty close square at the time of this eclipse. We have Saturn at 11 degrees. We have the sun and the moon at 15 degrees, which is very significant. And 15 is the devil. And 15 is the devil archetype. And so because the eclipse, this is where we're getting into the law of correspondence and letting the physical world speak to us and awaken those elements of our psyche so that we can tune in and be creative with it. Or it's all of life is just a conversation that we're having with each other, and that we're having with the cosmos, that we're having with our inner plane, which is our inner dimension, which contains everything that we see in the outer world. So the Capricorn really also represents the mystery of the inner and outer. It represents how we create. The Hebrew letter for Capricorn is Ayin, one of my favorite letters in the Hebrew alphabet, and it represents the power to see reality and to create it as we see it. So this is perhaps the theme for today that we're going to be talking about with this karmic initiation is all about ego. But I'm doing this lead in. I want to kind of bring in these elements before we go drop right into the ego. So the Ayin is our power to visualize reality. We are dreamers, and we are dreaming this reality collectively and individually. Ayin is the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet, so it's related to the tower as well, which is that lightning bolt of the Holy Spirit that comes in, of awakening. We can, and that's a hint that when we see reality, we're either drawing from the lower forces to see, or we're pulling in and anchoring in the light of divine wisdom to see. Ultimately, it's a marriage between the two. We need both. But if we're only seeing from the ego or the lower forces, we're seeing our construct of reality is very egoic. And it's going to have a very intense relationship with our body of pain, which the body of pain is housed in Cancer. It's also in Pisces, but the water signs carry the body of pain in a big way, the pain body. But Cancer really holds the power of the body of pain. And that would be its shadow, but also its strength. And Capricorn holds the ego. And so the ego and the body of pain are like the masculine and feminine of the shadow. And the ego triggers the body of pain, and then the body of pain makes the ego contract even harder and fight for rulership over our reality. So ego and pain body can create one reality. Spirit and the depth of the mother, the divine mother. The divine mother is the pleroma above and the mother below, and they work together. But we have the opportunity to see reality according to our consciousness, and that is what is huge. That is what gives us sovereignty and power to realize that in this playground of life, we're dealing with our emotions, our psyche, and we are healing that by coming into our power, by understanding how the archetypes work and how the elements work within us. This is all one big field of consciousness. There's different octaves within the field, but we are learning to become masters. Saturn will make us a master. And so Saturn, because it teaches us about contraction. All of life is based on contraction. I'm going to take a quick peek and then remind me I'm going back to that. All of life is based on contraction. Just going to scroll through these really quick. Yes. Capricorn ascendant. I'm feeling more grounded, but still distracted. Oh, that's interesting to hear, Ozzer, that you have a Capricorn ascendant. Very interesting. Okay. Confirmation. Great. Happy New Year. All right. It looks like we're good. So eventually I'll peek in and see if there's any questions. So we're learning about contraction. The reason is because Capricorn is the devil. The devil is very dark because the devil is the force. Ayin is the force. And it's the force to contract and bring the spirit in, which ultimately brings us into bondage. The lower realms would like to keep us denser and they want us to keep our soul light because in the lower realms, the further it gets away from the true light, it doesn't really have at the phantoms and the shadowy figures. It's shadows and phantoms that exist in the shadow world. In our world, a lot of what exists is just shadow creatures and phantoms. The lower we go, the more that's when we start to hallucinate. When we're in the lower worlds, we see that there's shadow creatures everywhere. They exist with us. And those shadow creatures aren't fueled by the light, and so there's needed a certain amount of light, soul energy. It's like in the Matrix, where the bodies are someplace else, but they're plugged in, and they're being siphoned. Their energy is being siphoned into the matrix below. Not so far off. But what we're doing is we're gathering back our soul energy, all of the pieces of it, and we're learning how to command the space and access more of who we are, our spirit. So, what I wanted to say is that the devil archetype also is connected. Saturn, who rules the Capricorn, which is the devil archetype, key 15, the eclipse is at 15 degrees, is connected to death because we see it's represented by the skeleton or the skull and crossbones. And that skull we see in the archetype for Scorpio, which is the death archetype. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto. So we have now the archetype of Scorpio, Pluto in Capricorn, along with Saturn, its rulers. In the archetypes, Saturn is cosmic consciousness, key 21, and Pluto is the last judgment. That's why I put the last judgment in the description box when talking about this video. This is really the last, we're entering into a phase of our awakening, which is the last judgment. We are going to be karma, which is ruled by Capricorn, and then we're going to hit some of these planets. Karma is really only our own use of the law of contraction. So we have the law of attraction. We're really using the law of contraction. I think I've never actually seen that said before, but we're using the law of contraction because we are manifesting and we're contracting the astral light into form. And that is what this archetype of Capricorn rules. So we're taking a look at right now, karmically, what have we brought into form? What is our world about? We're going to take a close look what we've each individually brought in, how we're using. We do this through our emotions and through our thoughts, and that's why in the Capricorn archetype, you see the subconscious mind and the conscious mind chained to the cube of space. That black cube of space, it's chaining our subconscious mind and our conscious mind, meaning it owns us. We are being worked by the lower field. We're actually being used and producing the images that it wants us to produce. That's that's something to meditate on. We have to consciously question our reality and ask ourselves, am I creating what I want, or is something acting on me? And using my ability to see all of the five senses, because Capricorn is much about five. 15 is the five working through the one. So it rules the five elements, the pentagram. The pentagram in the archetype of Capricorn is facing down. I'm not even going to do it with my hands, downward. It means it's going towards death. It's trying to pull the soul energy towards death. We need to use a downward facing spiral to bring things in, but it's the ultimate is to bring us into complete bondage. And the esoteric meaning of Capricorn is bondage, but it's also liberation. Okay, I see some caps. I'm going to take a peek. Yes, yes, Capricorn, Saturn and Capricorn. Well, it all works together. It's a language and it flows. So in the sacred archetypes of the major arcana, Saturn is 21, cosmic consciousness, the world, which is the fruit, and Saturn rules the fruit. That's why we're in the 7th year and we're tasting the fruit of what we've created. And Capricorn as the zodiac sign, good question, Wendy. Yeah, Capricorn is 15. So Capricorn, the planets, the sacred planets have their own archetype, and the zodiac signs, they're different dimensions. Zodiac is governed by 12. And so the zodiac signs each have their archetype. The archetype for Capricorn is the devil. The archetype for Saturn is key 21, the world, but Saturn rules Capricorn. So by the law of correspondence, Saturn's included in, oh yes. So North Node, South Node in Cancer. I'd recommend watching the North Node in Cancer video. And I'll touch on that a little bit. It's going to affect your direction. Let's see. North Node in Capricorn. It just means that your North Node is, okay, so your South Node is in Cancer. You're probably going to be using some of your strengths from Capricorn to help. Oh, okay, so just one second. Is it the South Node in Cancer? Okay, South Node in Cancer. You're going to put it this way. You're going to be called upon to use some of your past gifts to cultivate your new gifts. You're going to be called upon to help transmute the energy of Capricorn with the mother energy that you already have in your auric field. Our psychomagnetic field is really the poles of our South Node and our North Node. In other words, we all have a North and a South pole in our being. We're really, which really work at the occiput in the back of the head and the sacrum. The lower moon governs the astral plane, and the lower, we talked about the astral plane when we were talking about drugs. It rules the lower lunar forces are what really mess with us, and they create our body of pain. The higher lunar forces, which is our North Node in our body, in our being, are our true north. And it's the power of the transcendent astral light, which is really connected to the pleroma of light, the galactic core, and the womb of creation. So that's the divine feminine lunar energies are actually very, very, very sacred and powerful. In this dimension, we are playing mostly with the lower astral lunar energies. And so that's why we have this kind of trickster energy that's always present and always trying to deceive, trying to misuse our energy, trying to pull against the rising of that. And we covered that when we talked about being under the influence of any kind of drugs or alcohol or even some pharmaceuticals that can really pull us deeper into the lower. Okay. Yeah, interesting. You know what? The Galactic Center, that's a good, I'm going to be doing archetypal series this year where I'm taking specific archetypes. That's a good one for a whole separate video, but I will touch on it. So let's look at the planets. Let's look at the rest of the planets in Capricorn. So we have, we just touched upon them. We have the South Node, which makes it karmic. We have Pluto, which makes it very regenerative, life and death. But it's life or death. This is life or death. We have Saturn, and so we're going to talk even more about Saturn, and we have Mercury and the mind. And the mind is the number of Mercury. I'm giving a lot of numbers and archetypes today is 5. 5 is one of the numbers in 15, and it's the active principle. So the active principle with Capricorn really is the mind. We have to have the great gift of accessing liberation through Capricorn is to have command of our mind. And I jot down 3 things I want to give you as just some ideas how to work that. So, I think I talked, so Jupiter is going to be squared by Mars. We've mentioned that in the past couple videos because it's been active for a while, but at this eclipse, Neptune from Pisces is squaring Jupiter in Sagittarius. It's worth mentioning that Neptune is in its own sign of Pisces. Jupiter is in its own sign of Sagittarius. Mars is in its own sign of Aries. Also Uranus is there, which is kind of Marsy. And Saturn is in its own sign of Capricorn. This makes some of the mutable and cardinal signs really, really powerful. The zodiac is strengthened when planets come into these alignments in their own sign, and there's 4 of them. So that I can see right off. The North Node is in Cancer. Well, North Node is a moon sign, and that's in the sign of the moon. So that's another one. Also, all planets will be direct. I believe it is starting January 7th. So there is a huge momentum. You guys are giving great questions today. I'm going to take a moment and look at them in just a second, I promise. So there is a huge momentum for this new year. This is why I want to say when this year I'm super excited about. It's good to be back here on a Friday. The momentum is strong. The Aleph of the year is a solar eclipse in Capricorn, the sign of the new year. In the way we look at it, in the zodiac, the sign of the new year is in Aries, but where Capricorn is really where we fall when is where the sun is when we have our winter solstice, our Capricorn solstice is the new year. So the momentum is strong this year. Starting off this year. This year is the fruit. So what you focus on, you can create. And so now let's drop into some questions because there's some really beautiful things I want to touch upon that you have all been bringing in just in comments and the dialogue that we've had in the comment section underneath this. So if you're on the live stream, you have to come back to comment. You can't comment, but you can comment in the chat, which is great. I just sometimes miss them. I'm going to look at the chat and just see what we have going. So this is interesting. If you have a high vibration and you drink alcohol, will it also pull you down? Wonderful, wonderful question. And so, and I experiment with this all the time. I occasionally drink red wine. I've kind of let go of everything else over the years. When I was younger, I had a broader spectrum of what kind of alcohol I would drink. Now, it's mostly now and then a good red wine. But I pay close attention, and this is what I will say, because I like to consider my frequency as being pretty lit up because I do a lot of interacting with this kind of information and wisdom and a lot of meditating. And so a good amount of the time I'm feeling quite tuned in. And so what happens when I drink alcohol more than ever, I notice, this is what I want to say. And I want to also say no judgment. I talked about drugs last time, and I know different various people that I work with on this platform and that are artists and that are still kind of experimenting in different ways and bringing stuff in. And there's no judgment when I talk about that, but I have to talk truthfully from what I've seen in my work, because it would not be of integrity for me to not share what I've been witnessing over and over for many years now, especially in mentoring, really observing that. Yeah, when I drink alcohol, even now, even though I love to socially have a glass of wine. I love wine with a really nice dinner, and just even a really beautiful glass of wine at the sunset and to relax can be really nice. However, I have noticed in the past, it started about 3 years ago, but really in the past year and a half or so, that I instantly feel the pull. And it's not, what red wine also carries spirit. It's used in a lot of sacraments because there is something about wine that holds a sacred energy. However, this is just for me, but I'm going to share it. When I drink it now, the second it tastes, it hits my tongue and my taste buds, I feel the pull. It's unmistakable that my mind goes through a shift immediately. And I'm so hyper aware of it because of the work I do now. It's like this is how the way I feel about it now is that I am aware. Sometimes I'll think, oh, it would be nice to have a glass of wine this week or with dinner or with some friends. But instantly, because I've seen the effects, a lot of the times now I'll be like, oh, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, what I'm experiencing now is so heightened. I don't want to give it up. Like I don't want to, I don't want to, meaning that the higher frequencies trump anything below them. I mean, they just do. Meaning when you start to feel, and and I can call upon that in a greater way when I want to in meditation. There's times when I am experiencing it nonstop in my life. especially when I'm working, it starts to come in really strong. But I know now because of the work I'm doing that I don't want to negotiate that because it feels too connected and your connection kind of shifts. You go back into that astral a little. And even though you have a high consciousness, which is wonderful, and I know all of you here are working with some higher energies, it still pulls you down. Now, this doesn't mean we can't let down, cut loose, and celebrate with our friends now and then in the right context too. It can be, been teetotal for 20 years. I don't even like it. Oh, I don't even know what that means, but I think I might know what that means. What does teetotal mean? So I find I just don't want to give it up. I just, it's not willing. Now, maybe someday will it come back that I can, just have a bottle of wine with friends? Maybe. But right now I'm less likely to just say, oh, this would be great to relax. That being said, however, um, I haven't said never because in my path I deal with the middle path, right? I'm working strongly with the middle path, and so balancing the forces. And so I tend to never say never, but I tend to always try to go to the center path. And we'll talk about the center path. The center path balances, means no alcohol. That's what I thought. Excellent. I always think that's so amazing, just because there's something really profound about it. I mean, that's just how I feel about it. To be completely without, um, and that's not a judgment. It's just something that I tune into. So please tell us what sovereign unity is about. Oh, that's so interesting. That's that's what brilliant. So how we have sovereignty and how we have unity. That's what I think you mean. It's kind of how they coexist. How we can be sovereign and oh, thank you. And we'll cover alcohol a little more. Detail only drinks tea. I love it. Oh my God, I love it. That's so funny because I'm a huge tea drinker. Love tea. Thanks for sharing that. So, okay. So how we can be sovereign but part of the whole, and that's huge because that is part of the lesson of Capricorn, that we have to claim our own sovereignty before we can just blend with the whole. Oftentimes blending with the whole before we have transmuted our body of pain and our ego, the negative ego, oftentimes if we dive into sovereignty too quick, it's escapism. And it's also dissociation or denial, meaning we have to own our own stuff first. We don't have to sort through every single thing, but we have to get a grip on ourselves. Meaning if you're carrying tons of negativity, which we all are, wounds from childhood, wounds from this. Capricorn rules the family lineage, so it rules our DNA and our our biological lineage of our family, which is one of the questions I'm going to talk about in just a moment. We have to own our own stuff. So sometimes we have to put up huge boundaries and push out the world and look at who we are, look at our pain, process it, understand why we can't commit, why we're non-committal, why we have the addictions that we have, why we want to escape, why we even need to know ourselves gender wise. So, and I'm going to talk about gender in just a moment, meaning however you psychologically connect gender wise, as well as in your body. And if there's any conflict, we each need to own that, look at it, and really, really get comfortable with it, understanding why we carry the psyche that we carry. Once we shine light on it, we can own it, and we don't have to be defensive, and we can own it with pride. Capricorn kind of has this a little bit of pride and arrogance, but it means it's comfortable in the world. It means it can be out there and be seen in the 10th house, being graceful and owning who one really is. Once you know your wounds, you're not as insecure. When somebody's really hyper insecure or really, really triggered or really, really, now this can come from trauma as well, but the trauma usually comes and is activating our wounds. It usually means they haven't come into a peace with who they are. And so that means time out. That means take the time, nurture yourself, explore, study, find teachers, find light, find yourself, your inner light, and love yourself. It's truly, this year is about loving ourselves so that we can be you. When you love yourself, you're in unity consciousness. Once you own who you are, truly, you see that everything else is an extension of yourself. And so you have pure compassion. You can't beat down yourself. Nobody in their right mind would do that. We do it all the time. But yeah, good question. It's but we get more comfortable in our own skin when we love who we are. And that being said, I'm going to talk a little bit about gender. I'm going to talk about family. Those were two of the questions that have been coming up a lot. And because I work with the principles of masculine, feminine, and everything in between, I like to speak to that. I'm trying to see. I think we covered the planets. So the planets are just that there's a heavy hitting load in Capricorn. And as you know, we've mentioned this leading up to January 2020, there's going to be a conjunction of Pluto and Saturn, and Jupiter will enter Capricorn. It's really going to fire up the sign. The sign is on in the North Node's in Cancer. So karma's on, initiation's on. We'll talk a little bit about what initiation means. All right, we're going to close out pretty soon, but I just want to, let's see, what else did I want to say? The eclipse is conjunct the star Vega, from the Lyran constellation. I've linked in the description box. I put some mythology about the star Vega. And I actually pulled up someone else's. Let me just talk about Vega for a moment. I found this is on Dark Star Astrology. Some of the archetypes of Vega, she had done some writing on it. I believe it's a she. And so these were some of her keywords about Vega. Blood is thicker than water. Well, that's Capricorn. Capricorn is about blood and the family lineage. So remember, Vega is at 15 degrees. Well, is conjunct the eclipse at 15 degrees. Family honor, loyalty. This is all very Capricorn. Musical, theatrical. There is a certain earthy artsiness to Capricorn. They don't wear it on their sleeves. They're not the most. Although many of my, actually, I have to say, many of my Capricorn friends are artists and performers. Arty and crafty. Lyrical, charming, and we're going to talk about the word, and music is very important. Charming the birds from the trees, yeah, to get what it wants, definitely. Pied Piper, paying the piper, which I want to talk about. Karma means paying the piper. Karma doesn't mean someone's sitting in the sky saying, okay, you did this, now you're going to get this. You did this, now you're going to get this. Karma means the contraction of the force, and it means that we have to pay the piper. Whatever we called in, for every, I believe it's Newtonian law, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I don't know if I'm correct about that, but I think it's Newtonian. That's karma. That's all it is. Songbirds, lullaby. It's the star of music and the sound of the spheres from the Lyran galaxy. High status, flashy cars, impressive. So this is great. The pinnacle of success, snobbery. This is great. These are some of the words that go with the archetype of Vega as well as Capricorn. So make note of it. That I want to say also, because the sound principle is active at this solar eclipse, working with the power of the word, and sound and music are very, very, very important. 5 is Mercury, and Mercury is the word. I've done videos on the power of the word, many of them. And to just say that all of these videos, even though they're done for astrological events, they contain archetypal wisdom that you can go back to and listen to over and over. That's the way I make them. So that even I do them with the new moons and full moons and different events, but the archetypal wisdom, if you go back, I did one for Gemini last summer, the power of the word. But the power of the word is on. Music and sound current is on, because this eclipse is conjunct the star that represents music. And music is really vibration and creation and the soul. And so we're moving in, because this is an Aleph, it's a beginning, it's an end because it's the 7th year, but it's a beginning. We are learning how to work with vibration. And that is how we learn the law of contraction with Capricorn. So that's just a little bit of information on that. All right. Oh my gosh, I could go on. I'm going to have to continue. So I was going to talk all about the dark forces, because the dark forces rule through Capricorn, and they rule with the force light. They rule with the darker sexuality, where they use our sexual energy. And we'll continue this on when I talk about the archetypes of this year. But they rule with the false light. In other words, they get us to hook in with vices, addictions, all kinds of things. And then our pain bodies are just going crazy, producing more and more of the same. So I know that's dramatic, but with the North Node in Cancer, the pain body is being called up, the ego is being called up, transmuted through Capricorn. This is one of the exercises. I'm just going to give this exercise now. Social media can be a tool of the contractive energy, which is death. So just remember, we come in with the same energy that we die with. The soul needs the contractive force of Capricorn and Saturn to get here, to come into matter, but it's also that contractive force that takes away our body. We live in time. Capricorn rules time. We are in time and space. And so when we are at the shallow levels of thinking and feeling, we're creating the matrix. So this is one of the exercises I wanted to say. People are often saying, what can I use to be more present or to connect with I am? When you're the way you can gauge where you're at, when you're going through your social media, scrolling through whatever, Instagram, Facebook, newsfeed, all of the others, you check in with your breathing and check in with your thoughts. This is the same as alcohol. I want to say that yeah, okay. So many good questions this time. If I don't get to them this time, I will continue with them, or we can talk in the comments. Um, really watch your breath. I notice when my breath changes now immediately. Even when I'm doing this work right now, I can feel when it contracts. That can be connected to what we've eaten, what we've had to drink, if we've had caffeine, and certainly different drugs can slow down the breath or speed up the breath. It's amazing. But watch your breath, how it changes, because the ego, when the ego gets active, the negative ego, the breath gets really like, it's like it starts to contract or hold. And the body of pain can brings on a more of a heaviness to the feeling of almost like depression. And then then it triggers the ego and the ego triggers it, and they have that relationship back and forth, and you'll feel an old issue come up. And sometimes if we just see something on social media that can trigger that, or we're in the climate of different people's energies that are battling out or having low vibe talk and all of these things, it can activate us. So one of the things you can do, pay attention to your breath and how you feel and what thoughts come up. Are they competitive? Are they not feeling worthy? Are they anger about social justice issues? Know yourself and just know, and know that as powerful as those are, as they give us information, we have to return into the Noggle. We have to go into the space. If we're artists, if we're doing spiritual work, if we're doing anything like that, we have to detach at times and go into our own home. And so I'm going to start to finish up. There's so many things I'm going to continue with. I'm going to do another video really soon. Let me look at the chat and see what questions. I saw a couple other, the father energy. I had two father figures. Okay, so this is what I'm going to talk about. That I'm going to do that because one of the questions I wanted to say was that I've received some really heartfelt communication from people. I had been talking a lot about family lately and family archetypes, and the mother, the father, the child, the children. Sometimes I'd refer to being a mother, and some people have voiced that they find it almost hurtful or to not feel included if, let's say, many people had come forward and said, I never knew my mom or my dad. Many people that wanted to have a child that realized in this lifetime it's not going to happen. And so all of those things. So now coming back to your question about the father, all of these I promise to touch on them, and I will continue to touch on them. I want to say that even people who have families oftentimes are very, very isolated. I've experienced this myself. I have a huge family. I'm the oldest of 6 children, but I've had many periods in my life where I was completely isolated for different reasons. I've talked about it a little bit on here. And I might as well have been alone on this planet. There's also people, and I do a lot of mentoring, so I work with people who are dealing with healing huge karmic patterns with their parents, and it's been the pain of their life. So to know one thing that, and we talk about this, that sometimes it's, well, I always tell those people to start off, appreciate that you have your parents here to get to do some of this work, even though it's very challenging and hard, because there is something very valuable about that when we're all still in our body, having that resolve. But that being said, this has been coming in more and more when I meditate. The inner home, because North Node in Cancer, the Cancer is the home within. Each one of us have to establish our inner home. The world is brutal, and we may see more brutality coming. So we have to establish our inner home. What I wanted to say about social media is, and even YouTube and comments, and it's amazing what you see, does everything it can to pull us up and out of our inner home. Our inner home has to be on, and we have to create it. Within our home, we have a father, we have a mother, and we have our own child, which is really the child of ourself. We're seeing ourself as the magical child. But when we create our own inner home, everyone in the world becomes part of our family. And we start to see all this is Ayin. This is the power of Capricorn to see reality. We don't see reality, we see a false light perception. The one who sees reality becomes a fountain of light for everybody. It doesn't mean that they'll be loved by everybody, but they will attract people whose fountains will be lit by that fountain. It's like we're lighting each other with wisdom, and those fountains will go out and light and create new springs that will spring forth from the heart. So with the father energy, yeah, I'll have to continue on with it next time, but let's just see if there's one last thing to be said about it. The father energy is healing on the planet. The whole entire family archetype energy is healing, but we need that archetype. We need that strong archetype alive in the planet. And Capricorn is one of the portals. The true father is the spirit that's above the ego, and it's the logos power that comes in through this archetype. We all need to awaken that within us. And yeah, we'll talk more about father figures as we continue on. I think there was just one more thing I wanted to say. Sovereign unity, we got that. We got the drinking alcohol. Yeah, the contracting and attraction discussion. Can you talk about the Galactic Center? Okay, we're going to do the Galactic Center a little bit more. The Galactic Center is really an archetype. All of these, I want to say, in astrology and the archetypes, they're all elements of our own mind and our own creative imagination. It's really the archetype for the Galactic Center is within us. I believe we have three. We have one in the pineal gland, or we have one in our heart. We have one in our solar plexus and in our sacral chakra. We have three wombs. It's a womb. We have three, but the throat chakra bridges and the solar plexus bridges as well, and the root grounds us in. So we'll talk more about the Galactic Center, but just know it's within you, and it's the divine creator of reality and of form. So that being said, let me see. I think that's it. I think the video is a little bit long, and that slows it down a bit. I want to say there is a link to I'll talk more about it next time, but I do mentoring every 3 months, and I'm starting a new round in January. All through January, contact me if you would like to do 3 months of mentoring, and you can get more information about it in the description in the description box. I'm just going to see if there's anything else. Any last thing? The three cauldrons, nice, yeah. Hebrew letter SP isn't Ayin. 167. Yes, Capricorn, it is 15, and yet it's the 16th. Okay, you can write to me later. All right, everybody, Happy New Year. I will see you regularly in 2019. Some people said they weren't getting notifications. You have to subscribe and hit the bell. And I don't even exactly know where that is. So subscribe and hit the bell, and you'll get the notifications when we go live and when we do live streams. It's so much fun having you here. But that being said, you can link, if you need to get in touch with me, you can find links in the description box. Namaste. Many, many blessings for this new year. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. And so I look forward to what lies ahead.